Well, we've got more news to get to here in a second. We're going to talk about Syria. Speaking of which, some big updates in Syria and the United States involvement there. And we're going to take your super chats in just a moment. But first, I want to tell you about our community. We've got a community at Redacted. So if you support independent journalism, it's what we do here. We're not bought and sold by any big media corporation, by any billionaires telling us what to say. We have no Bill Gates telling us what to say or do around here. So we get to cover the stories that we think are important, and we go wherever the facts will take us on these stories. So if you want to support us, you can. You can just go over to redacted.inc, and for like the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can become a channel supporter. Again, we post things to our group first. New videos, new releases. We've got our Redacted Conversations videos that go out to our supporters first before we make them public. We also have members-only content that no one else gets to see over there. So if you go to redacted.inc, you can become a channel member, and you can also sign up for our newsletter at the same URL. If you go to redacted.inc, it's not .com. It's let me just show you real quick, because I was meant to show you on my page here, and I did not do that. So just give me 1 second. That's why we got to get a video made, because I like me typing this in.
I'll make one tomorrow.
Like something nice here. Okay, so if you go to redacted.inc, this is the website. There we go. And just click on Become a VIP member today. And for the price of a cup of coffee, you can support what we do. There you go. Chris Cannon in our chat says, I hate the 30-minute wait when that notification goes off. Thank you, Chris. Well, we appreciate that. And we appreciate you being here with us every night. Thank you so much. All right. We've got more news to get to. And I do want to talk about what's going on in Syria. So something big just happened in Syria, a country which I think is incredibly important for a number of reasons and really important to cover here on this show. But the mainstream media totally ignores the story. They totally ignore what happened this weekend because they were too busy watching this crap. Watch.
Extreme MAGA Republicans. MAGA Republicans have extreme MAGA ideology. MAGA Republicans. MAGA Republicans are...
Yeah, wall-to-wall coverage of that instead of actual stories that really matter to people. Before we get into what happened in Syria, let me ask you a simple question. We'll put this up here in the chat and see how many of you can actually answer this question. Does the United States have any military outposts in Syria? Yes or no? Just a thought experiment. I'm just going to take a sip of water.
Just get a little bit of water.
Just getting a little bit of water. You guys answer yes, no, B. Let us know in the chat here.
B.
Yes or no? No, that it was a yes or no question. There was no B in it. There was no A or B. Okay, so a lot of people saying yes. A lot of people saying yes. You can say in the chat, what do you guys think? Yes. Overwhelmingly yes so far. Okay, if you answered yes, you
get
are
a gold star.
You are correct. You got the first part of our thought experiment done. The next question here, let's put this next question up on the screen. Now we have a screen for you. How many illegal military bases does the U.S. have in Syria? Here's the question. How many illegal military, and I say illegal because the government absolutely does not want us there. So we have no right to be in Syria. How many illegal military bases does the United States have in Syria? Is it A, 1, B, 2, C, 7, or D, 28 military bases? What do you guys think? How many in the chat? You guys just weigh in. Give us your thoughts. I'm watching it.
Knowing the U.S. military, my guess is 28. I don't know, but that's my guess.
28, 20. A lot of people saying D. A lot of people saying 7. Okay. The correct answer, if you guessed 28, you are correct. According to the Syrian president, Bashar al-Assad, there are 28 U.S. bases or outposts that are currently deployed with U.S. forces in Syria. Now, the U.S. doesn't like to admit any of this, and they only kind of basically say that they've got 2 military bases there, right? So there's kind of a discrepancy. We have actually separate reporting from multiple news agencies talking in the dozens of military bases are out. So here's my thought. If you have forces in another country, and even if it's a little shed, that's an outpost. If you've got military U.S. soldiers at a little house, a little shed, a big warehouse, a big building, it doesn't really matter. You're in their country illegally. So it really doesn't matter what you want to call it, right? So according to Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, 28 U.S. bases or outposts.
Jeez.
And U.S. soldiers currently deployed there. They don't mention it or admit it or not, and it doesn't matter. They're illegal. Now the U.S. this week quietly announced another building. They're building a brand new, what they are saying is their third big military base. Now, okay, third, right? 28, 3, somewhere in between is the truth, right? Nevertheless, here's how the Syria news report put it. The U.S. forces, this is a Chinese news report, established a third military base in Syria's northeastern province of Hazaka on Saturday. In a war monitor reported. The new military base was set up in the village of Nakara, 3 kilometers southwest of the city of Kamashili in the Hasaka province, and the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said. All 3 U.S. bases in this area are located in areas controlled by the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, the Britain-based Watchdog said. The U.S. forces have established multiple military bases in Syria since entering the war-torn country in 2014, with its largest one in the Al Omar oil field in the eastern province. The Syrian government has repeatedly urged the withdrawal of U.S. forces from the country, referring to them as occupation forces that entered Syria without its consent. So why the hell are we there?
So weird. Why would you build a base next to oil? Like, that would have to stink, wouldn't it?
I know. You'd be like, why would you go near like a diamond mine? Why would you go near uranium fields?
Yeah.
Why would you go near oil?
Makes no sense.
All this extra oil, it really makes no sense. Unless you wanted to steal it. So what the United States, why are we there? Anyone answer this question in the chat? Let me know. Why are we there? That's the great question, right? Do you want the real answer? Or do you want the one that the United States tells the rest of the world? Because what the United States tells the rest of the world is that they are in Syria to fight ISIS and to fight Al-Qaeda. That's what they tell us. And to protect, they say they're guarding the Syrian oil fields.
I'm just going to hold that for you.
Yeah, I'm going to hold that for you. You got $100? I'll hold that for you. Right,
Are they
from
protecting it
themselves.
from us?
Well, as Kevork Almassian says, friend of the show and journalist, Syrian journalist, he says, yeah, protect it from us? Like it's our oil. We can take care of it. Thank you. We don't need you to invade our country and protect our oil. Get the hell out. So that's what they tell us. But the truth, of course, is that the United States uses ISIS, uses Al-Qaeda. We detailed all of the uses of Al-Qaeda in another video. I'd encourage you all to go check that out. We won't go through it here. As weapons pour across the border, they're funneling and supporting Al-Qaeda, and the United States knows that, and they're doing it on purpose. And they're supplying massive amounts of weapons to Al-Qaeda and to Syria to carry out attacks against the government of Bashar al-Assad. They've been doing it for years now, right? We steal their oil, and we pretend that we are simply guarding it. Here are hidden cameras that caught Americans with a convoy of semi-trucks stealing Syrian oil. Look at all of these semi-trucks, or these tanker trucks, filled with oil, Syrian oil, leaving the oil fields. And where were they going? Into Iraq. Into Iraq for use by American forces or being
Probably Halliburton
sold
trucks
off.
too.
Yeah, who knows? But being sold off. This is Syrian oil that we just stole. That's the United States. But the U.S. also concocts widely discredited stories about the Assad regime. I didn't mean to say regime. That's Assad government. Like that, literally, like propaganda even pops in your head sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's Bashar al-Assad is the president of Syria.
He's the leader.
It's not a regime, right? Like, so
It's
that's
an
my
administration.
mistake. Yeah, the administration, right? But they call it the Assad regime. And it's amazing how pervasive like propaganda can be, right? Where sometimes it just like slips out in natural conversation by accident on my part to even slip out like that. So my mistake. But anyway, it also concocts widely discredited stories about Bashar al-Assad and using chemical weapons against his own people. Of course, that has been widely discredited. That's been proven 100% false by the OPCW. An excellent journalist, by the way, who were there on the ground, who covered this story, like Eva Bartlett, friend of the show, Vanessa Beeley, and others, and Aaron Mate, who's been on this story from the very beginning in Duma, the alleged chemical gas attacks. We'll get to that in a second. That didn't stop, though, the United States of America from lying directly to our faces about this Syrian gas attack. Watch.
Now we want to get you to the State Department, where moments ago, spokesperson Heather Nauert said the U.S. has proof that Syria was behind the chemical attack on civilians. Let's listen to that.
Sharing information, intelligence included, and we can say that the Syrian government was behind this attack. We talked about this the other day. The White House has addressed this as well.
Yeah.
Is that a recent video?
No, she's been gone for the State Department. She was there during the Trump administration.
No, so this was after the gas attack. This is the alleged gas attack that didn't actually happen, right? So this was we're at the State Department. We've got this breaking news. We've got this information. We want to get out here at the podium and tell you that we have proof, says the State Department. The reason she didn't have any proof, though, to share, it was all a lie. That's why. It was all a lie. They used that lie to justify attacks against the Assad government and killing civilians. They used that lie to set up military bases, and now they're doing it again with a third military base because, God, we don't want Bashar al-Assad to gas his own people again, so we need a third military base while we protect your oil. It's such a sham. And so few Americans would actually read the information. Just go to the Gray Zone. Read Aaron Monte's reporting on this. Just dive into the OPCW report. It's all there. Like, you can do it. I love something Caitlin Johnstone said yesterday on the internet. She said, she goes, don't bring your ignorance to me anymore. We have an internet that within seconds, you can literally find anything. You can find accurate data, find the proof in these stories. Don't bring your ignorance to me anymore.
You used to be able to do it a lot more. It's getting harder to find real information, factual information, because Google is suppressing a lot of that now.
Oh, yeah, I'm not saying just Google. First of all, like we said yesterday, like World Economic Forum cover-up of what we were doing on the show yesterday, if you Googled information about the World Economic Forum in Chile, any bad results, you couldn't find it. You had to go page 3 of Google before you had all of the World Economic Forum data drowned out first, because I don't know what kind of cahoots they are with Google that they're taking up the first 3 pages of Google before you can even get the accurate data about it. But it's there. Just take a little time. It's like going to a library, spend the time at the library, dig through it, dig through the material.
You're not reading, as Roger Waters would say.
Well, it's like you gotta trust your professionals in that. Like, if you want a deck built, you call a carpenter. If you want to find information, you find an actual journalist, like an independent journalist. Because mainstream media is gone. They don't seek anything out. They just take the official narrative.
Yeah.
So then that's evidence enough. Well, the government said it must be true. But if you find independent journalists, they're actually digging for this information, and they're professionals at finding information.
Yeah.
So it's a good source.
Yeah.
And good note keeping in this case.
And independently funded, by the way,
And, even just since starting research on this show and for the newsletter and such, there are many times when I read some narrative from CNN or New York Times or something, and I'm like, that's not what we were told just, however many months ago. And I can go back through our notes, but the software that we use, and find links that say something different. But if I Google for it, no, I can't find it, right? So we have to independently keep our own archives, because otherwise it's as if they really think we're stupid.
I know. That's why I started building, like, here on the show and for our channel and our network here, like, I started building a news archive of our own data and our own source material.
Right.
Because, if you just do a Google search on some bullshit thing that the New York Times is telling you, you're going to get drowned out by mainstream media news results that are parroting the same bullshit that they just were.
We see it all the time. We see it right now with Dr. Fauci just last week telling us, I didn't really say lockdowns. I didn't mean it. I didn't make everyone go into lockdowns, right? Like, they really think that we're going to, was that just a suggestion and I went along with it? Oh, that was nice of me. How compliant.
They really think we're stupid, though, because at that same press conference, so here's what they do. They used that lie, right? They used that lie, that Syrian gas attack lie, to justify attacks against the Assad government. That's exactly what they did, and killing civilians. They used that lie to set up military bases in Syria. That's exactly what they did. They used Syria as a proxy staging ground for the entire Middle East. It's like the linchpin for them in the entire Middle East. And when pressed during the same press conference on this question about what evidence they had about the chemical attacks in Douma, they didn't present any evidence at all, but instead said, we have our sources. I can't provide anything for you. Watch this.
Elise, go ahead. Sorry.
At what level of confidence are you that that Syria was responsible. I mean, there's having proof and believing that they did it, and then there's incontrovertible proof and a high level of confidence and assurance.
A very high level of confidence. Hi, Barbara.
We verified the intelligence coming in?
I'm not going to be able to give you information about the intelligence that we're gathering on that.
But you've got your own, you've independently verified that there is
The United States government has its own sources of information. We have been assessing this thoroughly since this took place on Saturday. Okay.
Yeah, what, the white hats? How discredited that has been, right? Dive into, then of course the West was all up, well, the white hats are there. They have these film crews that are mysteriously behind them as they're pulling children out of this, of rubble. Oh, really? Really? When you actually dive into the story, you realize it's total garbage, total bullshit. It's been totally discredited now. Again, watch my full interview with Vanessa Beeley on that piece of it, and there's a huge report on this, on the white hats that she's actually working on. Totally discredited. The reason she didn't have any proof when she was standing there at the podium is because she didn't have any proof given to her. She was a spokesperson for the State Department, right? They didn't give her any proof, and so she was having to spin and move on to the next story, next subject. And because it was all manufactured, it was all a lie. None of it was true, and the Western media ran with it. Journalist Aaron Mate testified before the United Nations about the Duma gas attack and the fake story surrounding it. What happened was stunning. The OPCW investigators went to Duma and found no evidence of a chemical attack in their initial report. But then, of course, someone got involved. Who mysteriously got involved and discredited and then fired those initial inspectors and basically rewrote the report. Here's Aaron Mate at the United Nations speaking to the different member countries about this. Watch.
It would mean that in the case of Duma, the OPCW was exploited to accuse the Syrian government of a chemical weapons attack in Duma in April 2018. It would also mean that the OPCW was used to retroactively justify the bombing of Syria by several member states just days after the alleged Duma incident. In short, it appears the OPCW was compromised to justify military strikes. There are also indications that the OPCW has retaliated against two veteran officials, one of them is here today, who were a part of the Duma investigation and challenged the censorship of the Duma evidence. These two OPCW officials are highly regarded scientists with more than 25 years of combined experience at the organization. Yet, instead of being protected and given the chance to air their concerns, these two scientists have seen their reputations impugned by the OPCW leadership. There is substantial evidence to back all of this up.
Yes, thank you, Aaron, for his excellent reporting on this.
He has since been called a conspiracy theorist and personally attacked, right?
Oh, yeah.
For laying this out for us.
And by the way, they can't point to one. So when they level these attacks against him, they have no evidence. They don't point to any specific example. And he's called them out to their face, and they still spin and can't come up with any example because they can't, because they're total shit. By the way, I meant to say white helmets, not white hats. Sorry about that. It's white helmets, not white hats. Men without hats. But again, why is the United States in all of these war zones, killing all of these people, spending billions and billions of dollars? Jeffrey Sachs is a professor at Columbia University. He just wrote a really damning piece about the U.S. military and Western bullying and why it's going to lead to the collapse of Western society. Watch this.
This goes back a long way. I think it's useful to start 30 years ago. The Soviet Union ended, and some American leaders got it into their head that there was now what they called the unipolar world, that the U.S. was the sole superpower and we could run the show. The results have been disastrous. We have had now 3 decades of militarization of American foreign policy. A new database that Tufts is maintaining has just shown that there have been more than 100 military interventions by the United States since 1991. It's really unbelievable. And I have seen in my own experience over the last 30 years, working extensively in Russia, in Central Europe, in China, and in other parts of the world, how the U.S. approach is a military first and often a military only approach. We arm who we want. We call for NATO enlargement no matter what other countries say may be harmful to their security interests. We brush aside anyone else's security interests. And when they complain, we ship more armaments to our allies in that region. We go to war when we want, where we want, whether it was Afghanistan or Iraq or the covert war against Assad in Syria, which is even today not properly understood by the American people, or the war in Libya. And we say, we're peace-loving. What's wrong with Russia and China? They are so warlike. They're out to undermine the world. And we end up in terrible confrontations.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Read his West False Narrative piece. It's out now. It's a really, really damning piece about the Western. I mean, this idea that going back, to 1945, the Cold War, and even, even later than that, but like, this is what we need to do in order for us to build strength. We need to arm whoever we want, undermine countries, invade countries, set up over 900 military bases around the world, 28 of them in Syria. That's how we spread democracy.
And how's that working out for you?
Yeah. Just go back to the beginning of the show.
They don't
and watch
count all of the legit ones as bases, so we don't even know. Like, we say 900 bases, but there's probably way more than that if you count depots and armaments and all that other stuff.
Oh, and it's all redacted, by the way. I mean, the name of our show is for a reason. So I've been pouring through. I've been reading a lot of Jack Carr. I love Jack Carr. I don't know if you guys read any of his novels or not, but I love his stuff. The James Reese series, The Terminal List.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yes.
And anyway, he says in the book, he says he has to hand it over before he writes it. He has to give it over to the Department of Defense, and they redact huge chunks of the book. And he's like, I leave the redactions in there. So as you're reading it, you can tell me whether or not you think it's worthy of redaction or not. But it's oftentimes mentions of like secret CIA bases in different parts of the world that we don't know anything about.
Wait, this is fiction?
Yes, but he was a Navy SEAL.
So he submits his fiction to the real government.
He has to get it approved because he was, and he knows about all these military bases.
Okay.
He's been there, secret ops, all of these military bases. And so all of these bases and places that he mentions in these books are redacted in Africa and all. So there's, yes, to your point, David, so many bases that we have no idea about in countries that maybe they don't even know that they are even there in their backyard. Like, that's what the United States does.